Welcome to Emotional Sobriety, the next step in recovery, with Dr. Alan Berger and Tom Rutledge. I was going to read a little bit from your Beyond Belief for today. Okay.
Okay, perfect.
Just to get us started. Okay, June 25th. Snobbery, but it's only a form of despair. Joseph Brodsky. I'm going to move down to the quote, which is this highest form of snobbery is still rooted in despair. Even if we feel superior, we still won't live forever. Our power is limited and our time is finite. Becker said, to live fully is to live with an awareness of the rumble of terror that underlies everything. Nothing assuages our own insecurities and anxieties like power over another. The higher road or spiritual way is to own up to our insecurities and to humbly be in accordance with our fears and egotistical tendencies. Personal inventory and checking in with our closest confidants helps to keep us each level-headed. Do I see that my snobbery, superiority, is no more than fear and insecurity? Or do I tend to get off on being uniquely inferior? In truth, we are all slightly different, and we all have a right to be here.
That's brilliant. Who wrote that? It is. I make the joke, Joe, but it is brilliant. It's beautifully written and wonderful points. Yeah.
Yeah. There's some songs I wrote that, years and years ago that I'm glad nobody has a copy of, right? Because they would embarrass me now. But that stood up to the test of time. Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah.
But Tom always talks about what is it? Negative narcissism. Right?
What do we call it, Alan? It's like
well, I'm the worst one, right? It's like, no, I'm not just inferior. I'm like the most inferior.
It's negative arrogance. That's right. That's what the word that Joe used there. Yeah, it's like, I am the single piece of shit the world revolves around. It's like I am so special. And it's like that's one of the things we got to working with when we were working with the eating disorders. Because not the eating disorders have a corner on that market, but boy, they're good at it. And it's like our line was always getting people to the place and go like, well, you're not that special. You're not that one. You're not the one you're not the one out of this whole. I used to ask a group. I say, if you look around at your group, how many of you believe that everybody in this group you're looking at is going to be able to make it? All hands go up every time. How many of you think you're probably the one who won't make it? All hands go up. It's like, and of course, the punchline is, you're not that special. It's like, no, you're not the one. Man, but that gets in the way, and people mistake that negative arrogance for really and it's not. It's at least as self-absorbing as regular arrogance, but it really is self-absorbing.
Yeah, there's a real yin yang to it. Alan sometimes talks about, top dogs and underdogs, right?
Yeah.
That it's the same dynamic. I was at a meeting where they were quoting something from Bill Wilson about it's all about my selfishness, my self-centeredness, my blah, blah, blah. And, people who are dealing with or have dealt with trauma or, some sort of, catastrophic childhood, don't identify with that. Right. They have an inferiority issue that they're dealing with, an inadequacy. Right. I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy.
I don't count. I don't count.
Yeah.
It's like, don't worry. It's just me. Yeah.
Yeah. And while you were reading that, Patrick, I was thinking about like all of these emotions. I was in a little meeting of people about emotional sobriety, and I said, with no right or wrong answer, I said, so what is emotional sobriety? Is it to be able to go through life and contain and control how you feel and get along with people better? Or is it to fully express, completely candidly how you're feeling and feel that you have a right to do that at any given time? There was no consensus on that question.
It's both. It really is both. Joe was just talking about opposite sides of the same coin. See, emotional autonomy is really what the issue is. And when I achieve that kind of autonomy, then I have the freedom to be able to express myself fully and to be able to experience what I'm feeling fully.
Right.
At the same time, because we talk about it being an appropriate and honest relationship with reality, I don't just do that because I want to express myself. I'm thinking of the situation I'm in. I'm considering the impact of that. So, it's back to this idea that emotional sobriety is acting for yourself without being selfish. I
Yeah.
mean, it really is, to me, one of the ways of thinking about this that really captures the spirit and essence of emotional sobriety. Now, self-regulation, and we say control our emotions. I don't really think of it as controlling our
Right.
emotions
Yeah.
as
Right.
much as somehow being able to manage what I'm experiencing and regulating what I'm experiencing and trying to keep some kind of a balance, within myself between, not being catastrophic and awfulizing things or falling out of the other side of the bed, right? Which is minimizing things and somehow finding that sweet spot. And
Yeah.
it's not easy. I mean, we say it's a practice because, don't set yourself up to thinking that even if you achieve it in one moment, that's going to generalize and you're going to get it, master it all the time.
Right.
You know,
Right.
it's like, man, maybe out of every 10 shots, I can hit a pretty decent forehand, but I'm not going to hit it 10 out of 10 times. I'm going to approximate it, and that's what we're talking about. I mean, one way to talk about emotional sobriety is it's a series of successive approximations.
I get caught in that binary between containing and expressing emotion because I'm torn sometimes about how to express a very strong emotion I'm feeling in a way that takes all those factors into consideration. Anger, for instance, like figuring out how to be angry in a way that where I'm not, being unnecessarily disrespectful of, the person or entity that I'm angry at, and finding a way to keep that low emotional center of gravity, not just flipping out. Anger is just one example, but yeah, like
Well,
it's
a big example. I mean, if you talk about anger very much, I get really pissed off, and because we really misunderstand anger, man. It's like, I mean, everybody I know, including some of my favorite Stoic philosophers, refer to some feelings, including anger, as negative feelings. It's like there are no negative feelings. It's like, I just want to throw this idea in there. There's two different. More, but two different ways of looking at what we're saying. Part of what we're saying is emotional sobriety it has to do with your relationship with your emotions, period. It's like it's how you relate to your emotional self. It's like, so there are those episodic things. I got to figure out what to do right now because I'm sad. I don't know, in anger or whatever it is. But the other thing, the bigger thing that I spend a lot more time with my clients on than anything else about emotions now is changing their relationship with their emotional self in the big picture. It's like just the idea that nobody's normalized the fact that we've grown up in a world that doesn't normally, feelings are normal. We're going to have multiple feelings coming through us every single day. And our job, if we experience, I always say it's like the digestive tract. If you're going to ingest food, you're going to have to excrete food. If you're going to ingest experience, you're going to have to express, emotion. And it's like, and really, people, it's hard for people not to judge their emotions.
Yeah.
And they are not, it's anger's, they're all, feelings are signals, they're communication. Anger tells me something's wrong, it gets my attention. It doesn't tell me, to punch you in the head. It just tells me something's wrong, and I make the fucking decision to punch somebody.
No, wait, it used to tell you to punch someone in the head, though, right?
Well, it could still tell me that. I just don't do it. It's like, it's like a lot of the stuff that Alan and I talk about when we talk about the multiplicity of the mind is just being aware who's talking, and be aware of who you are. I am not that voice. I am, I am the one who's listening to that voice,
listening to that voice,
and who's responsible to decide what to do with it. It's like, yeah, because the Eckhart Tolle calls it the involuntary thoughts. I love that, because with our first thoughts, you and I, Alan, have talked about first thoughts and second thoughts. The involuntary thoughts are the first thoughts. We don't go out in a cognitive process to figure out what we're going to think. We think it, and if we're not taught that we're responsible to do more, then we just go with it. So, so if you get one, punch somebody in the head, or, I got to remember I'm not worth anything, then we just go with that. And that first voice carries us, and it's not who we are.
I think that put this in the context of emotional sobriety. See, we've got to understand that development, our stage of emotional development, our stage of differentiation, or our level of differentiation, mediates our relationship with our emotions.
Yeah.
See, if my differentiation is low, if my emotional maturity is low, then my emotions are going to be, I'm going to consider them an infallible guide to the truth. See, I'm going to treat them and make them a lot more than they are. And I also might make them a lot less than they are. See, when my level of emotional maturity is low, I'm going to overreact or underreact. See, that's what we want to understand. That balance that Bill talks about is not there. That only happens as we start to differentiate or grow ourselves along these lines, right? As I become more mature, then I can say, wow, look at how I'm reacting. I can observe my reaction, and I can say, wow, I notice myself getting really angry at you right now. And I'm thinking of all these names I want to call you. I don't want to say that because I don't want to damage our relationship, but I'm really in touch with how mad I am. You see how I've just talked about my experience and owned it, but not in a selfish way where I've now damaged the relationship.
Right.
So, see, that's the kind of maturity. Now, I wish I could say that I do that all the time. I don't. I mean, but sometimes I do. And when I do, I feel so much better about myself. I don't have to practice step 10. I don't have to go back and make, and make amends, right? Promptly admit when I'm wrong, right? That kind of a thing. So that's what we're looking for, right? Is, as you've heard me say, Patrick, lately, this is a growth disorder. We suffer from a growth disorder. We're stuck, not sick. That's the theme here. We're stuck, not sick. We haven't grown up. And this is all about giving us some tools to start to mature. And like Tom said, an example of listen to your second voice. Another way of saying that is get into a pause. Don't react to everything immediately. Give some space to hear the second voice.
Right.
If you act, there's no way you're going to hear your second voice. And
right. And what we're talking about is I'm just listening to what we're saying and listening and going like, yeah. So part of what we're talking about is we're learning about all the choices that we have all the time. We have all kinds of choices, but it's like if we're operating off of what you described, Alan, reflex. Basically, because my anger is just an energy. It doesn't really want to punch somebody. That's a cognitive. I don't want to get complicated, but that's a cognitive process in my head that's basically taking over the anger and going to tell me this what I'm supposed to do with it. But what we're doing is, you're right. The pause is it, Alan. It's like we slow people down enough to go like, let's just freeze frame this and look at all the options you have at this point. Because because it's shocking how many different points in the process of just a couple of minutes you're making choices and you don't know it. You're doing it by default.
And see, and this is the great observation, and I think it was brilliant that Rollo May made. He said, until we realize we're the determined one, we aren't going to have that choice. Until we realize we have no choice, we're not going to have a choice. It's paradoxical.
Right.
And my immaturity takes away all my choices. I don't have any choices because of my immaturity. I want it right now. I want to say what I want to say right now. I'm impulsive. I'm inconsiderate. I'm all those things that go with being immature. I'm self-centered. I mean, all of that stuff that we talk about. And even a person, Pat, you were saying something, it's interesting to me, Joe, and I've heard this, and I think people are right when they say, look, Bill was on the other side of the spectrum. He suffered from, this I want things my way and stuff like that, right? And the other person that feels so less than, or has what we call the self-effacing solution, doesn't think of themselves that way. They erase themselves. So Bill is amplifying himself. These people are erasing themselves. But the truth is, they're both suffering from a self-disorder.
Yes.
Right.
The issue is it's not that different. It's just the other side of the coin.
Yeah.
That person that amplifies himself feels exactly the way the other person does. And the person that feels like they don't have anything, secretly, they feel the way Bill feels. But they don't dare say it.
It's maladaptive for both of them, right?
Yes, that's the issue, and that nobody gets that. They polarize it. It's not.
Well, it's about balance too. See, that's the other thing. Very often, when people talk about things in continuums like that, we mistakenly think that the middle is the goal. The middle is not the goal. Full range of the continuum is the goal. I need to magnify there are times where I need to magnify myself to the max, and there are times where I need to take a back seat to the max. And I want to be a choice maker that can, to use Sharon Cruz's term, is like a choice maker that basically becomes really adept at making those choices, and even to the point where we practice them to the point of unconscious competence, where we're able to do it. And you can't become unconsciously competent until you really work at being consciously competent.
Yeah.
It's like learning a sport.
Yep. It's like learning anything. It
Or a
really is.
guitar.
It's repetition. And repetition is the key to mastery. And and I took some guitar lessons a long time ago, and I'm pretty sure the reason that I don't play the guitar is because I never practiced.
That'll do it.
No, I'm serious. I think I had some good teachers. It's like I didn't stick with it, and I didn't practice, and that's and But I say that, but it's like for years I was one of these people, and I don't think I was unusual, that basically would go to therapy or go to read a self-help book and think, well, this is good, and then later say, well, it didn't work. It's like and this is where they harp on you in the program. It works if you work it. It's like no, it works if if you want to learn how to do this, you just have to do it over and over and over and over and over. And I could go the rest of the podcast saying that because that's how you do it.
Yeah, no, just to your point, Tom, I had to remind myself, I turned in some writing recently, some screenplay writing, and I was not impressed with the result. I had to go back a couple times and punch it up. But then I had to remind myself, well, you haven't been doing it for the last 2-3 months, and you're going to be a little rusty. And it's not that you comprehensively suck. It's just that you aren't putting the time in to really get that result. But when you do put in the time, the result tends to be better.
You don't comprehensively suck. What?
No, just a little bit.
It's very specific in your sucking. It's like it's
Well, I wanted to give space to Joe actually, because you brought us our theme for today, and I really appreciate it. And I just wanted to ask what brought you to it, and where do you struggle to regulate?
Well, some of the things that I borrow from, and like everything, when you start going out there, incorporates into one's emotional sobriety. Like, for instance, if I feel humiliated If I feel angry, I borrow from Dick Schwartz and internal family systems and go, Joe, part of you is
Yeah.
angry. Part of you wants to rip their lungs out, right? Part of you thinks you've been slighted, right? Not all of me. There's that discernment is with the, what IFS calls like the capital S self, right? Or our better selves, in other language. So when I'm having a feeling, it's not all I am. It's not who I am. It's a part of who I am. So that really helps me find my way back to the middle of the twirly thing that I'm about to fly off of, right? Just where, the gravity isn't fighting with me. And in the book Living Sober, they talk about anger, for instance. And Living Sober was written, 40 or 45 years after Alcoholics Anonymous. It had hundreds of thousands of cases and, 40 years experience. And they said about anger, a bunch of sober alcoholics were interviewed about, why were the reasons you drank? And one of them, almost universally, was they couldn't express the anger they needed to get out without getting drunk, right? They drank to express the anger, not to contain it, right? They needed that to be able to let it out. And so how are we, like the whole idea of sobriety isn't to not be angry, it's to how do I express it? And Alan gave a perfect example of personalizing it, right? I feel this way. I need this, right? It's that's not putting demands on anybody. That's just expressing your process. And is our environment emotionally sober? I think I got Tom hooked on Gabor Mate's The Myth of Normal. And he talks about we need a attachment in society, in our family, in our recovery communities. But if that attachment has a but, like we have to give up our authenticity and we have to conform, that we've lost the connection, right? I need to be able to express myself unabashedly and be accepted and loved. If I have to conform to a certain behavior, a certain way of thinking, like, sure, it's a social place and you have to have a certain amount of cultural norms, but a healthy environment allows me to be angry if I'm angry about an issue we're talking about. It allows me to sort of connect with the people no matter, I can have a bad day and I'm not letting the group down, right? Yeah, I can be a bad example. Every once in a while we need one of those too. I don't want to be put in a small painted into the corner identity that I've got to live up to, right? I want to be able to have my whole range of life and my whole range of feeling and my whole range of expression.
Well, yeah. As soon as a relationship like that becomes conditional, then all bets are off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like people mistake things like, oh, that's an outside issue. It's an outside issue if you're trying to dissuade or persuade people to your point of view. It's not an outside issue if it's affecting your sobriety, right? If it's my personal experience,
How am I doing with it?
that is the addiction.
Yeah. And by the way, Joe, I just want to say to you, because I do appreciate you very much, that you have been a very wonderful negative role model for me in many different cases. It's like,
Thank you.
You're the first guy that comes to mind.
I've worked very hard to be so. Thanks for noticing.
Alan, I brought it up on the show before. It's been a while, but I was just always struck by when you had that experience when you're moving to Pennsylvania with Rocky, and that moving company took such a terrible care of your dog, but you had like a very mature, in my opinion, and like regulated response to it that I feel.
And more mature than Patrick or I. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, but I do mean that like it was
No, that's
proportional
good.
to the, I mean, well, I don't know. Does that apply to what we're talking about maybe?
That situation was horrible. I mean, it was our poor dog almost died from the maltreatment and the lack of responsibility and responsiveness from the other company.
Mhm.
But
Accountability. Yeah.
yeah, there was no accountability in that. But look, our first concern was the dog and getting the dog
Mhm.
what he needed, and got it to the vet, a good vet. They hospitalized him. They gave him IVs. In 4 or 5 days, they brought him back to health, and he was near death. I mean, he really was. And we tried it. We talked to them. We appealed to them to refund us. Nothing. They wouldn't. They wouldn't make it. They wouldn't even pay the vet bills. And so we
Jeez.
had a decision to make. Do we go ahead and file a lawsuit and go through that whole thing, or just say, we're grateful that we were able to respond in a way to save Rocky's life? And we just decided on that, is that keeping the thing going wasn't worth our time or energy, and that we were responsible, even though they weren't, and that's all we could control is
Well,
how.
I tell you, Patrick, this is what you and I, you tell me if I'm wrong. This is what you and I witnessed with Allen, because we talked with him about it, but we talked with each other about it at the time. I just now kind of put it into this reference. It's like, he talk about relationship with your emotions. Allen ran a very good, tight triage with his emotions in this situation. And basically the ones who got taken to the back, first are the ones that have to do with Rocky and his safety and his health. It's like there are a lot of other emotions. He had the same stuff that we were experiencing from a distance of, like, how pissed off we were about all that. But those did not take priority. Because and that's a beautiful example of, like, when you're that tuned into your value system. Not everything is not the most important thing. Yeah. And a lot of people try to make it's okay for everything to be a priority. It's like, it's not. It's by the concept of priority, there are things that are not priorities. And in that case, there were some heavy duty emotions that we all had, and Allen had, I'm sure, stronger than we did. But that's what was beautiful to me, is watching you just laser focus on loving your dog.
Yeah,
it was beautiful.
You've met Rocky, so you know what a sweetheart he is. I mean,
he's like the Never-Ending Story, that big fluffy dragon.
Yeah.
That's what he's like.
That's Rocky. That's a great description of Rocky.
Great.
But it goes to the point that Tom made earlier, which I really want to focus on that for a minute, is zoom in on it. Is that there's always a range of possibilities.
Yeah.
And like I said, a lot of times my level of consciousness may not see those things. And that's where bouncing things off someone else that might have a higher level of maturity or has different experiences than I have or whatever, they may see things that I don't see.
Or just has a different perspective. Well, sometimes a more objective perspective.
Look at the range. Let's look at the range of things that could happen. I could have gotten, as Fred Lushkin says, when reality happens, we can just object to the reality. I could have gotten stuck in objecting to the reality, been a victim of it. Look at how terrible this is. Got lost in that whole thing and said, see, this is an example. Life sucks. Gotten depressed. And as Tom said, totally forgot about Rocky and now made it all about that life sucks.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one possible response to it. Right. On the other hand, I could have booked a flight to Los Angeles, found out where the guy lived, brought my 9mm pistol, shot the guy in the leg, and walked away. Right. And show, this is how my dog is feeling right now. I mean,
right.
So we got these wide, extreme possibilities. one of the things, thank God for sobriety, is a lot of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, I don't have to be at the extreme ends of these things anymore. I can start to find a way to live more in that middle ground we talk about. Now, that middle ground, as Tom was saying, my God, there's so many choices to make.
Range, a lot of range. Yep.
On the anger side, I could have sued, I could have pursued that. On the other side, I could have just focused on this. See, so one of the things that I love about this work we do is to help a person find what possible response along this continuum fits with who they are and helps them maintain their integrity.
Right.
See, that's the issue for us, is how to honor myself and the situation I'm in and learn to cope with it in the best way possible, so that when I walk away from it, I'm feeling good about myself and I'm feeling like I have been effective in dealing with what I needed to deal with,
Absolutely.
even if things didn't go my way.
Well, let me just add this piece, because when you're saying that, because you're talking about all the range of choices for you how to behave interpersonally. The other piece that's about emotional sobriety is, well, we definitely don't think before we get into this, thinking this way, that these are choices. It's about how am I going to deal with it internally? Because as somebody who basically used to let anger just eat me up, whenever I was pissed off, I was the one who, it was no joke. I was the one who was suffering, not the person I was mad at. It's like I would get these resentments. I would go back and I would just, it's like I would ruminate on it. And it was just like it's just like I was chewing on poison. And so that's another thing we do, is we make a choice that I think they're connected, because your interpersonal choices supported you being able to let go of that internally on a day-to-day basis, and not have to sit there and just have that anger on an endless loop tape.
Well, and what you're saying is right on, Tom. I mean, how I relate to myself is how I'm going to relate to the world. I mean, there's no question about it. I mean, if I don't see possibilities within myself, I'm not going to see those possibilities in the world. It's just not going to happen. I mean, I was doing this guy didn't show up for the session, but I was working with his partner last night, and she was talking about her disappointment in how he's showing up for the relationship. And then she describes him as playing 12 hours of video games several times a week. And I'm saying, wow, you're surprised. You think that somehow he should be able to treat you better than he's treating himself. He's getting lost in 12 hours of video. Is he really giving himself? Now, he thinks he's giving himself something, but what does 12 hours of Call of Duty give you? Yeah, some entertainment. I'm all for playing, a game that's fun for a while, but how nourishing is it? Is it helping him advance himself? Now, if he's going to be a special operator, I think that special forces operator, and maybe playing the game is useful kind of thing. But you see, it's back to this thing. I can't give you something if I'm not giving it to myself. It's just not a possibility. It's not a possibility. And see, people get upset about that. Instead of, it would be so much more effective for us, instead of complaining to him about what he's not giving to her, if she talked to him about what he's not doing for himself.
Wow.
See, then he's going to feel cared for. The other way, if she complains to him, guess what he's going to feel? Criticized. And what's going to happen if he gets criticized? He's going to typically protect himself, probably become defensive, probably justify. Why is it I have to live up to your, justify the unjustifiable kind of thing.
Right.
That kind of thing. But see, if she went to him and said, God, I can see that you're getting lost in this, and I'm concerned about you. I'm also concerned about what it means for us, but my first concern is what's happening for you that you need to do this. Let's talk about what's missing in your life that you need to disappear like this.
Yeah. Oh, okay, I want to balance something out here though, because for people who are listening, it's like that doesn't mean drop what your concerns are and care about that other person instead.
Oh,
It's like that could be misunderstood that way. It's like your dissatisfaction does not change. You're just as dissatisfied as you were, and all we're really talking about right now, and some of it's a bit strategic, I think, which is like how can you go about getting some involvement that might make a difference. And and I like the idea of what Alan's saying about, and specifically adding that to it. It's like, in maybe leading with that in the conversation. But I want you to be sure, everybody to be sure, we're not saying that your dissatisfaction is less important. It's just not going to get met the way you're doing it. Right? Did I get that right, Alan? Yeah.
Exactly. And see that, and that's a very important thing. I'm not saying sacrifice yourself for the relationship.
Right.
What I am saying is that person's well-being is of self-concern for you because you love them and you care about them. And that's how we manifest that, is to show empathy for another person. Love is based on empathy. It's empathic attending. There's no love without empathy. It just doesn't happen.
Right.
For me, one of the things that I have to think about is, what are my tendencies? Are my tendencies to demand my needs are met first? Are my tendencies to dismiss, oh, I'm upset, but I see you're upset more. So, let's make you happy here. But that's the maturity in emotional sobriety, is yes and. For a solution to work out, she needs her needs met and he needs his needs met, right? And you're trying to facilitate all of that happening, not one or the other. And if I am prone to dismissing myself to meet the needs of my loved ones, because that's the only way I feel like I'll be accepted. That's a problem. I have to be an advocate for myself too, but not at the expense of others. And
Right.
I've been listening to this podcast forever, and you've been saying this forever, right? But it's a daily thing. It's not a one and done thing.
Well, and that's, let's kind of circle back to where we started from when you were reading from Joe's book on musings. And, what a great way to start your day, to start reflecting on some of those issues and to really bring into your consciousness some stuff just like, the 24 Hours Day book did for people early on in recovery. And you've achieved that, Joe. It's a very, very great piece of work that you've done.
We got some angry messages a couple weeks ago for our politics episode. The audience members that, if you've chosen to stick around these last couple weeks, I appreciate you and impose no demands on what you believe, and have no desire to exclude you from these conversations any more than I want to be excluded from yours. I'm hoping that there is kind of a shared baseline that we can meet each other on. And I never made any claim to being neutral about my political beliefs. And so that spills onto the show sometimes. So that's where I'll start. Any of you guys want to step in?
Well, somebody also, reached out to me and said that he was disappointed that we chose to talk about, outside issues. And I said, well, first of all, this is not an AA meeting. I understand AA needs to be neutral on outside issues and avoid those controversies. And I respect that, so that we don't alienate people in meetings. I mean, and that's our unity comes first, right? And that's very important in meetings, so that we create space for everyone. But so here in the emotional sobriety space that we're trying to create, differences are welcome. You know, I am opinionated. I have ideas, I have values, and I have thoughts about things. Doesn't mean mine are right or any more or better than yours. And so there's room for all people, you know. The fact that I have a certain idea and opinion does not, you know, in any way, you know, exclude or discount people that think about things differently. And so this is just, I just want to welcome that, is that we're talking about our perspective. If it's something you relate to, great, then enjoy it. If not, then just leave it behind, move on, hold on to your ideas. And, but don't make me wrong because I don't believe the way you do. And I'm not making you wrong because you don't believe the way I do. Let's try to find a space. You know, I like the way Rumi says it. There's a field beyond right and wrong. Let's try to meet there.
Right.
There's a field beyond right and wrong. Let's try to meet there.
And we do make a mistake a lot of times. Our culture makes a mistake, and we buy into it, where agreement and respect are the same, and they're not. Respect. One of my little nutshells a long time ago wrote, just says respect is not necessarily expressed through agreement, and it's like, and basically, if the political world could get a hold of that one and do something with it, there might be some change. Because we need to be able to be in the same room with each other and have differences.
One of the things in that Gabor Mate book, one of his quotes is, a distinction must be made between accepting and tolerating. Being with something and putting up with something have precious little to do with each other. One of the issues, I think, that's lost in a podcast that we would have if we were in a group of people and all of these listeners were there, is an opportunity to invite and give them choices, right? Like it went on in a direction that they didn't get consulted on and they weren't asked about. Bill Shaberg talks about in his 30 Things Practical Advice for Living Well, the conversation before the conversation, like being able to say to someone, there's something I really need to talk about. I want to know when's a good time. Here are the things that are affecting me, and I want to talk to you about them. And the audience isn't getting that, right? They're just sort of they're tuning in the second verse of the song.